Welcome to the C-Suite podcast with me, Russell Goldsmith, and Graham Barrett. We are here at Money20 Europe in Amsterdam.
Yeah, we're producing these episodes in partnership with LHV Bank. We've got an absolutely brilliant lineup of guests to bring you here on their booth at the event, and I really hope you enjoy these conversations. I'm pleased to say that we are kicking off the conversations on LHV's booth here at Money 2020 with Anita Paju, who is the Director of Banking Services. Anita, how are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. I'm Anita. I run the banking services team here at LHV Bank, which is one of the three business lines we have out of the UK bank. What we do is that we provide payments, accounts and infrastructure to other regulated businesses.
And tell me about your Money 2020 so far. You've also got a very spectacular stand here right in the throng of the action. Why are LHV Bank here?
Money 2020 is very big for us. We don't tend to do that many events. For us, it's kind of quality over quantity. So we go big every year. It's a very good way for us to meet all of our clients. So we kind of jokingly say that we tend to get a year's worth of work done in those 3 days. So everyone is here.
And then there's all the follow-up afterwards as well, of course, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. That's still 2 days away.
Yeah, exactly. Let's not think about that yet. Well, obviously, we're here at Money 2020, which is all about the next thing in payments, innovation in global payments, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you see as the kind of emerging trends in Fintech at the moment?
Well, on one hand, we're still talking about things like how you make payments instant in Europe, even in 2025, and how we increase adoption in open banking, things that we've been talking about for quite a long time. It's still ongoing.
Why is that, do you think?
I think because we're not quite there yet in Europe. As we have this SEPA area where things are supposed to be instant, but we're not quite there yet. I think, but good things are happening in terms of regulation and mandating banks to process instant payments. So hopefully we'll get there. But on the other hand, what we also are seeing is once fintechs reach a certain stage and maturity, and we have seen that quite a lot due to consolidation being happening in the market, is that the focus is really on how to keep the client on the platform, to retain the client, to kind of really expand the services, going into kind of more bank-like balance sheet business. And this is where I think the embedded services really kind of will continue to grow and become more and more relevant.
Now, you work with a number of fintechs. What would you say are the unique challenges of banking a fintech?
When you bank fintechs of certain size, they are very, very specific and demanding in terms of technology. About keeping the technology up to date, the performance, how incidents are managed, the security of the platform. So this really is front and center for us, being the kind of a technology company first. And when you pair that with the regulation and the kind of compliance requirements that come when you can provide services to other regulated businesses. I think that's quite a lot to chew on, but I think it's the kind of part of the business for us.
Now, a lot of the talking points that you've mentioned here today, we're going to be picking up on with the other guests we're speaking to. What are you looking forward to hearing about from those guests?
Well, we have a lot of exciting businesses lined up that we'll be talking here today. I think what I'm most excited about is to, literally have the front seat and to hear what is kind of top of mind for them in the future. So I think what is unique about our business is that we need to plan our roadmaps and products with a really forward-looking vision, because our clients provide intern services to their clients, which means that they also have their roadmaps. So whilst in retail, you can kind of launch a product first and then talk about it.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work in when you are the kind of infrastructure provider. Because if we did that, we would lose about a year worth of a sales cycle. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm really looking forward to hearing what is in the cards for them in the future, and what are the kind of things that are top of mind for some of those really exciting fintechs in the future, so that we can hopefully work together.
Yeah, because that might inform your strategy moving forward, presumably.
Absolutely, and it does.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, Anita, Paju, thanks so much for joining me. We're looking forward to these conversations as well. Thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you so much.
So welcome to the podcast to John O'Byrne, the CEO of Square International. John, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Excellent. Now, Square, you've been at the forefront of embedded finance. You provide small businesses with the tools that they need to thrive. What does embedded finance mean to you now, and where is it headed?
When I think of embedded finance, the phrase itself is almost dated now. I mean, we were chatting just beforehand here, it's all AI, tokenization, these type of words. What we mean by embedded finance is just making the complex simple and just embedding the platform into people's businesses. So it's actually helping them do what they need to do. So can you run the business faster? Can you run the business cheaper? Is it helping you grow the business? And the payments element, is just part of that process in a very natural way. So it's not like the original concept of embedded finance where you just slap a button onto something. There was a famous ad, with a washing machine and a brand of a detergent on it, and you press the button and the thing would arrive out. But here with Square, in terms of the platform, we've gone very vertical in terms of focusing on food and beverage and hospitality and retail. So it means that it's built around the natural flow that happens in those businesses. So everything that it's doing is helping you run that business in as simple a manner as possible and giving you the best tools to do it. And the payment kind of blends in there in an invisible way and just forms part of that process.
Okay, now you operate across both sides of the Atlantic. So are there any key differences between US and Europe when it comes to serving SMBs, but especially in terms of legacy banking, infrastructure, and the adoption of fintech solutions?
Yeah, they're very different markets. I mean, I spend, a little bit of my role at times is narrating. There's a different story for Europe and UK. It's coming from a different place. It's got a very different background. You've got this conurbation of just multiple different markets that speak different languages, and the customs and the context can just be different. But I think at 10,000 feet, they're just structured differently as markets. So the US banking system is quite fragmented, and you've got a lot of different regulation across the states, but you have a customer base that is really self-directed and loves to sort of take control of what they're trying to do and look for those best-in-class tools. Within Europe, you've got different regulation, different customs, different languages, but you've got a more embedded banking system. So when I think about it, if the US is at 2.0 in terms of payments, I would see the UK at maybe 1.5 and Europe at 1.0, because more and more of the payments in Europe remain with the banks. It's about 74%. Now we see this really consistent ongoing trend of migrating those payments away from banks and traditional acquirers and into really modern platforms, a little bit like we talked about, that just solve the underlying business problem and really start to work and support that business. And when you dig into that, I don't think there's going to be a tipping point or a dam bursting open, but there will just be this consistent movement catching up in terms of how embedded that already is in the US. And again, at Square, what we do is a lot of work in the specific target customers that we have. We really obsess over what their needs are. So when they see something being used or Square being used in one restaurant or in a store, they go, actually, this could really help me. And if I bring it to life, if you run something like a bakery, traditional bank acquirer, you do your normal business. At the end of the day, you tally up how much came in, but you're then manually reconciling your card payments to your cash payments to this. With something like Square's platform, everything is integrated. So that hour at the end of the day, you now have that time back because you could actually track everything in live form from a mobile dashboard the whole way during the day. It'll tell you exactly what you sold. And even better, when we think down to the future, it'll prompt you for, are you thinking ahead to what's going to happen this weekend or next month in terms of how it's going to grow?
Sounds fascinating. I mean, you've touched on the sectors that you deal, with in terms of food and beverage. I mean, what are their biggest pain points at the moment, and how are you addressing them?
So, when you think of these businesses, lots of businesses have many similar things in common, but the way they go about it can be quite unique to that sector. So if I think of food and beverage, I'd say one of the key pain points is that difference between your expected gross profit and what actually happened in real life. Because, you're going to have customers who come in, they're going to send a meal back. You might have mapped out all your suppliers, but, they're going to change the price of ingredients that you need to buy fresh, on a daily or, on a daily or ongoing basis. So when we design products, we really spend as much time sitting in the customer's shoes or the seller's shoes, as we call them, to understand exactly how that flow happens in their business. And we design the product with that in mind. So when you take something like Square as a platform, you've got your payments embedded within it, but actually it's helping you track inventory, it's prompting you to, what are the things that I need to think about next? And what you're trying to do at a really simple level is make the complex things simple and just save customers time, save them money, and help them grow the business. So, once you're past thinking around, did I make enough money? Have I managed my costs in the business? The other thing we see from every single customer is, how do I grow and expand that? And again, within the platform, it'll learn about your customer types, who's coming in, how they're working with you and how they're buying. But it will help you create loyalty programs, marketing programs, and business development programs so that you can keep expanding your customer base.
What about the end consumer then? What's their expectations when they're interacting with all those small businesses that you're dealing with, your customers? And also, how do you see their customer journey, experience? How is that going to change?
I think every local store now needs to deliver a world-class customer experience, because generally all of us have our expectations heightened, whether it's being able to access things immediately on your phone or expecting a local store to know who you are because you've been in there before, you bought your coffee there, you bought your goods there, etc. So we talk at Square a lot about trying to democratize our platforms so that small businesses have access to the same world-class tools that any big business has. And that's effectively what you get when you take the platform on. You can unlock and open up different SaaS or software solutions that effectively allow you to compete on a level playing field. Because what I really love about Square, and what kind of drew me to join them in the first place, is they're a very purposeful company. And it's really around, how do we empower people and businesses to access the economy? And you can only do that not just by educating them, not by showing what things might look here, but actually customizing and giving people those tools so that they have them. And once they have them, they're able to unlock all kinds of value and scale those businesses quicker.
Yeah, I suppose from a customer's perspective, is it like whether they walk into a huge restaurant chain or if they go into a small cafe, they want that same experience, don't they, in terms of the ease of payments?
Well, we want to be valued for what we spend on, right? So when you go in, you want people to recognize, oh, Russell, you've been here before. We know actually that you like your cappuccino with oat milk, and therefore, when you come in, we can start getting that ready, and we can reward you for that, for coming back. And I think there's small things, but again, it makes you feel like you're part of that community. And it's a big thing for us in Square, is trying to recreate that sort of neighborhood feeling at a local level, irrespective of where you are on the globe.
I do actually like oat milk and occasionally almond milk, so I'm worried now that you've been checking out on my profile. But listen, it's fascinating stuff. But for now, John O'Byrne, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So I'm now joined by Joëlle Bønding, the VP Vertical Strategy, Platforms and Financial Services at Adyen. Joëlle, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you were part of a fireside chat yesterday with the CEO and founder of Fresher, talking about the invisible engine behind SMB success. So, tell us a little bit about Fresher, how Adyen works with them, and then what the highlights of that session were.
Yeah, Fresher is a vertical SaaS platform that also is a marketplace on the other side for the consumer. So if you're looking for a salon, a nail salon, or a spa around your area, then you can go on the Fresher website and go and find a salon in your area. And then on the other side, what they do with their vertical SaaS platform is really help those salons to manage their business end to end, to help them with scheduling all of those appointments. And then most importantly, they also help them accept payments, get paid. And beyond that, they're also now building really a full financial technology platform that enables those small, medium businesses, which is what these salons are, right? To help them really manage all of their money, manage all of their finances in a single place. So it's really becoming a one-stop shop for those SMBs to handle all of their business.
And in terms of how you guys are working with them?
Yeah. So speaking of the invisible engine, we basically power their payments processing as well as the financial products that Fresher is offering to their customers. So what we do is give them access to our financial technology platform that we have built, of course, our banking license as well, and give Fresher the opportunity to offer payments as part of their offering so that the end user does not know that they interact with Adyen or a payment terminal powered by Adyen, but that they constantly feel like they're interacting with the Fresher brand. So they create really that relationship with them, and they create also that user trust, etc., with them, that will then lead into the financial services relationship that they're also now starting to build.
And was there a key highlight that came from that session? What anything particular that the audience took away?
Yeah, I think first of all, William is a great speaker and he's extremely passionate about his business, right? I think one of the key things that he kept landing was that the users have problems when they think about their payments processing, right? They don't necessarily realize it, but they work with different systems when it comes to building their website, maybe how they accept appointments, and now, of course, also payments. And what Fresher really does is bring it all in one platform, like a one-stop shop, essentially, that will help eliminate all of those technologies that an SMB needs to handle on a day-to-day basis. And so he really honed down on how do I solve for the problems of these users and how can I ensure they understand the value that we bring as a platform and therefore use payments as an additional revenue driver for Fresher's business, which is quite exciting for them as well.
Yeah, sure. Well, embedded finance is obviously a key topic that we're focusing on. So how would you say traditional banking is transforming through partnerships with non-financial platforms?
Yeah, I think it's massively transforming as a result. And Fresher actually is a really great example of that. I think what we are seeing with vertical SaaS companies is that they have a unique opportunity on capturing really that financial services TAM that's out there. When you think about all of these small, medium businesses that do have banking needs that are currently not served in the right way by the traditional banking system. And so if you think about, going to get a loan for an SMB and how difficult that becomes if you have a vertical SaaS company that now can leverage the licenses of an Adyen as an example, they continue to become that relationship provider in the first place, right? And they also have all of the massive amounts of data needed to really underwrite that user much, much faster and therefore also offer them loans and give them access to these financial services. So I think vertical SaaS platforms are really the one that are going to disrupt embedded finance and therefore also I think the traditional banking system.
What's the feedback that you're getting from the merchants that are using those, the SaaS platforms of your partners, particularly when it comes to embedded banking?
Yeah, I think the convenience in that sense, right? So for these SMBs, again, that they don't have to fill out, or write a business plan before they go and apply for a loan and have to wait several weeks. They now basically just get it fully, all automated within the dashboard that they use day in, day out. So a lot of it is really convenience. And when we talk to platforms like Fresher as an example in the vertical SaaS space, the returning the returning customers that are taking a loan because of this convenience is quite massive. I think we've heard even around like 80% return rate. So really it's around convenience. It's about building a trusted relationship. And again, I think these small, medium businesses, they have a really tough life running their business. They run low on cash. They have no time. So if the SaaS platforms can really play with the value they deliver, then that's what will be also valuable for the user to run their business more efficiently.
And what about from the end consumer's perspective? I mean, they don't want to hear all the buzzwords that we continually hear around Money 2020 and regularly mentioned on this podcast. They just want that kind of smooth payment experience. What are you hearing from them?
You mean the end customers of the salons?
Yes.
So me getting a hairdresser appointment?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think similarly, we as end consumers, we expect a seamless payment experience, right? We want to ensure that we can pay with the payment method that we expect, or with a payment terminal that accepts our cards and that doesn't take, several seconds in order for the transaction to be accepted. So we just really want to have an experience that is as seamless as possible. And if I can even pay in advance, go to the salon, get my haircut and walk out, that's even better, right? So I think that's of course the other side that we're trying to equip SaaS platforms with, is to create a customer experience that their salons are expecting to deliver to their end consumers.
Sure. Okay, final one for you. Just looking kind of a bit of future gazing. What are you excited about in the payment space over the next, say, 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, I think the example of Fresha and the vertical SaaS companies, they're really waking up to this opportunity of bringing financial services into their businesses, right? And making it part of their whole software proposition. And so we're really starting to see that payments are becoming a foundational piece that SaaS platforms are almost in need to offer. Otherwise, they're going to be eaten by their competition. So I think in the next couple of years, we're going to see that adoption increase even further. And at one point, it will be limited, right? And so I think we are going to continue to see platforms building more on the financial services proposition and think about new ways to offer financial services to their users. So I already mentioned lending, but think also around money management for payments coming into a bank account and then paying out your employees or your suppliers directly from that Fresha, for example, bank account, and also spending all of those funds from a business card. So all of these new, I think, ideas, they're becoming very fast a reality now in the vertical SaaS space, and we're excited to power them as the invisible engine.
Brilliant. We've been so keen to get Adyen on the podcast for quite some time. So, Joëlle, Bønding, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
I've now been joined by Grant Evans, who is VP Partnerships at Worldpay. Grant, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, not at all. Thank you for coming and sitting on the sofa with us. Now, there are a number of sessions at Money 2020 focused on open banking. Now, obviously, that trend has been around for a while now. Where do we sit with that right now?
It feels a little bit like a landmark year to me for open banking. I think, you look at Money 2020 2 years ago and all the rooms were filled with open banking providers, a lot of conversations happening around, open banking being the next big thing in payments. And I think we shouldn't get away from the fact that 7% of e-commerce payments globally are A2A transactions, and there is a growing market for open banking, but breaking it out into the payment initiation service provider versus the AISP side of things, which is more data focused, and understanding where the core benefits for each of those sit is really important. Pay by bank as a payment method to compete with cards still has certain challenges, but if you look at more accessible markets, UPI in India, Pix in Brazil, where maybe you've got less accessibility as far as banking ecosystem is concerned, those A2A payment methods have seen phenomenal growth. So maybe we just obsess a little bit in the UK market in particular around why does it have to be something that challenges with cards? Most acquirers like ourselves have either proprietary open banking products or partnerships globally with open banking providers. So I see it more as a complementary alternative payment method rather than what was maybe perceived as the great challenger to cards previously, and that's not really the way that I think we should be looking at it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be this big takeover, essentially. It can kind of evolve naturally, maybe. What about PISPs? What role are they playing in terms of cost, user experience, speed?
Yeah, I think cost's the big thing, right? But, with card payments, you obviously have the interchange fees, the scheme fees, the acquirer margin, and then you have an ISO potentially operating or a platform operating a layer above that and monetizing payments as well. So the benefit with a PISP was obviously heavily leaned into the cost point, faster transaction settlement, but card settlement times have dropped down significantly. It's normally 1 working day for most payment providers now as well in the market. So that tangible benefit's maybe been scaled back slightly, but the payment initiation service providers very much hone in on the pay by bank part of the ecosystem. And we've seen real success within financial services, particularly high value transactions, automotive, where the cost point on card has been a lot higher. Invariably, the adoption rate has been more successful in those markets, but then the consumer protection argument comes into play around, well, you've got that with cards, you haven't got that with open banking.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've ticked off open banking. What about embedded finance, another kind of buzz phrase that's been around for a few years now? Do you still see untapped opportunities in that space?
100%. I think the key thing with embedded finance for me is the pure nature of you've got someone in buying mode on your website, and there's various other products and services that they might be looking to secure at that moment in time, or that you could cross-sell into them. So embedded insurance, the return of growth of merchant cash advance, I think in the current economy that we're in as an embedded product as well. That is something that platforms are really, really heavily tapping into, new revenue streams that they can look at within the platform's ecosystem for embedded payments as well, when we're talking about the monetization of payments that these platforms can do, because they're owning the customer journey. I mean, I call ISVs the new gatekeepers to end merchants in the market. That's kind of the way that I term it. And that model of B2B sales in payments is more prevalent than it's ever been, because those platforms are now the target addressable customers as opposed to the merchants that sit below them. And you're earning the right to partner with that platform, getting them to embed your payments product, and they become an extension of your sales team in many ways.
Now, you've already mentioned some local payment methods, such as Pix in Brazil. And there's, of course, Wero now in Europe, which has been much talked about, much lauded. How do you see that kind of fragmentation? Obviously, every different country has got their own payment method by the sounds of it. So how does that benefit, or does it benefit merchants and consumers?
It's a little bit counterintuitive, really, when you think of the European market and the free roaming of individuals and the single market sort of mindset that exists within Europe, to then have hosts and hosts of different payment options. And I can see myself as a Spanish resident, and I'm traveling to Germany, whatever it might be. Do I need a different app for payments? Right, it's the same currency, it's all euro. So why not have something more centralized in terms of when you're thinking around accessibility to different payment methods? I think the fragmentation's probably been seen more as a hindrance than a benefit historically, and I think that's where Wero comes into play, right? Because they're trying to tap into kind of one single product servicing all of those different payment methods, and how realistic it is to maybe get that adoption quickly will be interesting to see. I think we talked about open banking 2 years ago, and it's going to happen really, really quickly, and we're going to see this game-changing payment method. I think there's that sort of narrative around it, but the reality is you're working with different banks within different markets. Payment methods like Ideal coming on board is great for them to see Ideal coming on board, but are you going to get everyone on board, and how quickly are you going to get them all part of that sort of single framework will be interesting.
I think you're right. In principle, it sounds like a no-brainer, does it? But as you say, there will be challenges that come with that.
I'm going to harp on about open banking, but you go back to countries where A2A has been successful. Collaboration from whether it's central banks or governments, saying this is the way we're going to go is key. And in the UK, the banks haven't agreed between them what that centralized version of open banking will be for pay by bank. So I think if they're getting more buy-in at a in-country level, then success will come from that.
Yeah. Well, on that theme of speculating and looking forward, if I had to pin you down and ask you for one innovation, one kind of partnership model, what would you point towards?
From a partnership model, selfishly, I'm going to say the platform partnership side of things, right? I think that partnering with platforms, it's been a thing within payments that every sales team has had an ISV focus, whether that's on POS or e-com in recent years. And because we have this new age gatekeeper setup, then that has to be the focal point for me in terms of who are the next platforms in your core ICP verticals, and how are you enabling them and their customers as far as payments is concerned?
Okay.
You know, we want to just be seen as an additional bolt onto their own tech stack effectively, and payments is a big part of that ecosystem now.
Excellent. Well, thank you for taking us through that. Thank you for gazing into your crystal ball.
Yeah.
Grant Evans, thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
So I'm joined now by Scott Dawson, the CEO of Decta. Scott, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, Russell.
Should we start with a quick intro to the business?
Absolutely. Decta is a proper end-to-end payment solution provider. So we have offices in the UK, Ireland, Cyprus, and Latvia, which means we have a great breadth of services that are regulated throughout the UK and EU. And then our technology center in Latvia allows us to provide technology services on a global basis, all of which are created to help banks, fintechs, PSPs, and merchants develop their payment infrastructure in a manner that helps them grow.
Great. Now, let's start with what you see as the real meaningful innovation happening in payments right now.
It's an interesting question. I mean, to kind of take a step back to that question, I think we sometimes have a tendency as an industry to conflate innovation and progress. Both of them are important, both of them can be great, but I see innovation as being something new, whereas progress being change that actually benefits the world around us. And I think as an industry, we should be focusing on the latter more so than the former. And so right now, I think the innovation that's important, the innovation that's leading to progress, tends to be around accessibility, tends to be involved around inclusion. And those are very broad terms, but it might be about banking the unbankable or allowing better access to finance for businesses. Could be developing technologies that make it easier for people with disabilities to access our financial services and such. And I think that's where there's the opportunity. And to be fair, that's where there is a lot of positive change at the moment.
Okay, so what do consumers actually want from a payments and customer experience perspective? Are fintechs solving the right problems, do you think?
I think we often do, and I think we're always trying. It's interesting, so Decta recently commissioned a piece of research in conjunction with Skyparlor and Censuswide to see what it is merchants should be expecting from their payment service provider. And to determine that, instead of speaking to PSPs or speaking to the merchants, we actually went directly to the consumer. There's a tendency in our industry sometimes to tell people what they want as opposed to listening to what they need. So we actually spoke to consumers. And in the next few weeks, probably by the time this podcast comes out, that piece of research will be available at www.decta.com. Shameless plug.
No, very happy for you to do that.
But I need to dangle a carrot. I don't want to tell you all my secrets. But what I will say is, generally speaking, consumers are looking for, in many respects, the same things as merchants: dependable, cost-effective, effective payment solutions. And one thing we really noticed in the piece of research that we did is that they want consistency. When a consumer purchases something online, it doesn't matter if it's an SME or if it's an enterprise or even a startup. They're not really taking the context of who they're buying from into the experience. They just want to know that what they need is there. So I think that the message, particularly to smaller institutions, to SMEs, which I'll probably talk about in a moment, is you might be a mom and pop operation, you might be a startup, you might have limited resource, but having a modern payment flow is phenomenally important.
Well, let's switch to the merchants then. I mean, what are their pain points and how should they be addressed?
So similarly, I mean, we speak to merchants on a daily basis at Decta, and we find that they're looking for the basics. They want lower cost, increased conversion, lower fraud. And how the payment service provider provides those services isn't necessarily their biggest concern. Their concern is that they're there, that they're accessible, and that it's an easy integration. All of the features and all of the products and all of the benefits that we tend to get very excited about as a payment service provider, to a merchant are just axioms. They're things that they assume that will be there. If you talk about how great your risk management is, for instance, and that is phenomenally important, of course, the reaction from the merchant tends to be, okay, cool, I expect that. People don't start businesses to discuss payment flow. People start businesses because they're passionate about the opportunity that the business is trying to capitalize on. We need to be in the background. We're the producer, not the actor, you know?
Okay, final one for you. One of the areas that we're keen to focus on is regulation. I was just wondering, if you were designing the next round of payments regulation, what would you add to help drive real resilience in the sector?
So if I were the queen of regulation, the very first thing I would do is make myself the fanciest of crowns. Secondly, I would try to create a regulatory environment that's maybe developed through more of a collaborative approach that doesn't just listen to the big voices within finance, like the banks. It would involve SMEs, merchants, payment service providers, trying to get input from everyone that's affected throughout that value chain. And I tried to create regulation that very much fostered the SME space. I mean, SMEs are fundamentally the lifeblood of the UK economy. They're responsible for 5.5 million businesses, 16.5 million jobs. I think that's about 60% of employment within the United Kingdom. It's responsible for, I think it's 2.4 trillion a year in annual turnover. But right now, that's a space that's hurting, that's not thriving in the middle of the turmoil we have on a geopolitical basis at the moment. So I'd want to come up with regulation that streamlines tax, that streamlines access to financial services, things like lending, bank accounts and such. I'd want to ensure that employment law is easier. I'd want to ensure that there are incentives for these businesses to come to and come back to the UK, because we're kind of losing our magic at the moment, and that's something that needs to be addressed.
Excellent stuff. Listen, really appreciate your responses today. Scott Dawson, thank you for joining the podcast.
Thank you very much, Russell.
A big thank you to our partner LHV and to all our guests for taking the time to come and speak with us at Money 2020.
Don't forget, if you've enjoyed the show, please do give us a positive rating and review on your favourite podcast app. But for now, from me, Russell Goldsmith and Graham Barrett, thanks for listening and goodbye.